Hey traders, in this video, I'm going to share with you what levels I'm marking up at the New York Open and how I take trades off of those levels. So if you find this information useful and helpful, like and subscribe, and I will be adding more free content like this. All right, let's dive into it. So at the New York Open, 8:30 Central Time for me, that's what I have the chart started out at. I'm going to mark the 15-minute high and low ranges, the 60-minute initial balance ranges, highs and lows, and then also anchored VWOPs. So I'm going to show you how I mark those and then also how I take trades off of those. So I'm going to kind of let you know my thought process as price action is actually moving live. All right, so let's start. I'm going to push play here and get a couple candles. All right, so first thing I do is I'll mark the anchored VWAP right at 8:30. So if you see my cursor, I'm hovering over this 8:30 candles, this red candle here. I'm going to anchor a VWAP right there. So I have it down here on my favorites, but you'll find it on the forecast and measurements tools. Right here, sorry, this one, the projection tool, and anchored VWAP. Hover over that 8:30 candle and click, and then you'll start to see that move as price action continues. Color code it however you want. You can change it up here in the settings. I make mine light blue just so I know every time I anchor a VWAP, that color is from the start of the New York session. Another thing, as price action goes on, we're only 7 minutes into the open at this point, but I do start to mark my 15-minute ranges. So I'll grab the horizontal ray tool, which you'll find up here on the trend line tools, horizontal ray, and I make mine extend out to the right. This right here is the 15-minute low so far. So here's the 8:30 candle. Since this low, nothing has come below yet. And I'll move those as price continues because we're only 7 minutes in. But on this line, I will add some text. So if you go up here to settings, you can add text and you can write in 15-minute opening range low. I have mine saved under templates over here, 15-minute opening range low, so I don't have to type it every time. I just go to my saved. And then at this point, this over here is the high. So I'll take another opening range tool, mark that as the high, and 15-minute opening range high. All right, so let's play a couple more so we can get the full 15-minute range. So this moved a little bit, so I'm going to move that down because that's now the current 15-minute low. Play a couple more to get that 15-minute. All right, so where I have my candle, my cursor here, that is the last candle of the 15-minute range. So my range right here where I have my lines, that is correct. The VWAP right here, you can see that it's kind of maybe trending down a little bit, but not much. We don't have a whole lot of data yet. And then this blue line right here, that's the overnight session VWAP. That is flat. So to me, that tells me I'm not ready to take a trade just yet because we don't have a super clear direction. You can see within that first 15 minutes, there was no control really. So that's kind of my thought process as we're going through this. But this 1 minute candle right here was a strong bar down. So possibly looking for sells, but let's see. What I do with these 15-minute ranges is a couple things. And I'm not going to get into the super detail. I'll walk through the 15-minute opening range strategy in more detail in another video. But a couple of things with this. You can look for a breakout of the range, a retest, and then take a short down, or same thing if it happens to the upside. If there's a breakout to the upside, a retest, and then a bullish reaction, you can take a long that way. You can also look for a fake out and then trade to the other end of the range. So as we move this price action forward, if this ends up being a fake out, it gets back within the range and starts to get bullish, then I can target the opposite end of the range. So let's see how this plays out. So right now, I would not be looking for shorts yet, even though it's outside of the range. There was a candle bar down. It's stuck here, right? Also, you can look to the left and see that there's quite a bit of support here. Like it's not breaking below this. If you look at my pre-market setup that I write out, there may have been support here. There may have been some volume support. So I would not have been looking for shorts yet. And now it got back within the range. It's starting to get above this New York anchored VWAP. Not yet. We need to wait for confirmation. But I wouldn't have taken a short here. That looks to me like a fake out. And now if we get confirmation, we can target the other end of the range. So that's what I'm thinking here. Let's play it out. Yep. All right, so staying within this range, not breaking out to the downside yet. It looks like sellers are defending, and there we go. So here, once it got to this opening range low and started to get above this New York anchored VWAP, right here, that was a pretty strong candle. You totally could have taken a long from here, put your stop loss right below that last candle, below the anchor VWAP, because if it got back below that anchor VWAP, you wouldn't have wanted to be in the trade anymore, and taken your profits right at that opening range high, the 15-minute opening range high, and that would have been pretty much a 1-to-1 risk to reward, and you would have hit your target for 26 points. So I know hindsight is 20/20, but as I was walking you through it, that was my thought process. I would not have taken a short here because there was no confirmation. It was kind of just chopping around, and then sellers took control again, or buyers took control again. All right, so let's continue. That was the 15-minute range. I also mark the 60-minute initial balance range. So we're only 32 minutes into open, but again, I like to mark it as price action is going. So this right here would be the 60-minute initial balance low. So again, I have that saved over here on my templates. And then as of now, that's the 60-minute opening range high. But I will move these lines as we move along within the first 60 minutes. So let's play it again and see how things move along. Get that 60-minute opening range set. All right, so like I was saying, it's very common for this to serve as a range. So right now we're rejecting that 15-minute opening range high that we had. I didn't take a short, but you could have. It looks like it's rejecting back down now, and actually it did. It hit that 15-minute opening range low. I personally would not have taken this trade just because it was still above this New York anchored VWAP and the overnight session VWAP, so it could have easily just come down here and then bounced and gone back up. So the risk to reward on that trade wouldn't have been great for me. But if it's in your trade playbook to take that short, then it would have played out to the opening range low, or the 15-minute low. All right, so let's see where we go from here. Look at that. Bounced off the bottom of the range. It looks like it's going back up to the top of the range again. So this day kind of worked out perfectly in terms of having it be a range play, but this happens often, all right? Okay, so now we are where my cursor is right here. This is the 30-minute, first 60 minutes of price action. So our range is set. That's the 60-minute initial balance high. This is the 60-minute initial balance low. So this is where most of my trades come from, because it's very common for sellers and buyers to want to stay within this range. So once it gets up to the 60-minute high, it's very common that it's going to reject a little bit. Not always, but you can watch for that. And then if it gets to the bottom of this, the initial balance low, you can potentially look for longs, a bounce to come off of that. So let's continue with price action a little bit and see if we can get any trades off of it. Kind of just chopping around here. In this middle area, I definitely don't take trades. I try not to, just because it's really easy to get chopped up. Like here, it looks like it's bullish, but it could reject from the VWAP. You never know. So now we're getting to the top of this initial balance high, 15-minute opening range high. They're both kind of in the same area. Let's see how price reacts here. All right, so something that I trade a lot is called a failed auction, and I can talk about that strategy in more detail in another video. But essentially what you would be looking for is, here is the top of the range. There's the 15-minute high, the 60-minute high. Like, that was a pretty strong area of resistance. So in this case, if price action breaks out of that, retests this resistance and shows that it's now support, you can potentially take a long here. Another scenario is this could be a fake out, so we could just be grabbing that liquidity, faking people out, and then it drops back below and you can take a short. So let's look previous here. I'll also take a look at previous price action. That right there is an area of resistance, right? There was a high there, so it could be grabbing that liquidity and dropping back down. There's also some previous support here in this area. You can see all of that. Let me grab my little tool here. You can see that was pretty good support for a couple of areas, which turned into resistance. So that would be something that I'm potentially looking for in terms of a failed action. It's right at that area right there. But like I said, we can also look at if it shows that this turns into support and gets bullish, then you can take longs. So that's my thought process. Let's see how price plays out. We always want to see how it reacts and wait for confirmation. So getting above, but nothing convincing yet. Yeah, that's a little bit more convincing. So in this case, it's definitely, I should have paused it earlier so I could tell you what I was thinking before I saw this candle, because obviously hindsight is 20/20. But on this candle right here, that bullish reaction, I was thinking long. I wasn't here because it was still rejecting from that area that I showed you to the left. And it did have a pretty good 1 minute candle there, but it still wasn't super convincing, not super convincing. Like, all of that was just a little bit of chop to me, which easily could have been a fake out and dumped back down. But this, another strong candle right here, that's where I would have entered. So let's see, I probably would have entered right about there, and then you can put the stop loss there. That's a 30-point stop loss, which is a decent risk. And then you can put your risk to reward at 1-to-1, 2-to-1, whatever you like to do. But I don't just play off of risk to reward. I'm also going to look left. So if I zoom out to the 5 minute and kind of see there's some resistance there, that might be a good possible target there. That would give you a 1.25 risk to reward. So there's a lot of different things you could do. You could also just trail your stop and see how much further you can go. Because if you zoom out a little bit more, I don't have it on here because I'm in replay mode, but that's a couple different scenarios that you could do. So let's go back to the 1 minute and see how this plays out. If you went to that resistance that I showed you to the left, that would have hit your target pretty much already. But let's see how it goes. Oh, wow. That was pretty much perfect. So that's why it's always important to look left and figure out where you should take your profits at resistance. Don't worry about, like, I have to hold it until a 2-to-1 risk to reward, because you would not have hit it, and then you probably would have gotten stopped out at break even. So look left, see where your resistance is, and it hit it pretty perfectly. So like I said, I kind of just skimmed over how the actual strategies work. The point of this video is just to show you the lines that I'm actually looking at, the 15-minute opening range low and high, and the 60-minute initial balance low and high, and how my thought process works as I'm taking trades off of them. The anchored VWOP is what helps me decide if I'm taking longs or shorts. So if it's above the anchored VWOP, I'm typically looking for longs. If it's below, I'm typically looking for shorts. But it's always important to wait for confirmation, because if it's just chopping around at this range, You don't want to get stuck taking longs and shorts, because then you can just get chopped out. All right, hopefully that was helpful. Comment below if you have any questions or anything you want me to expand on. I'm happy to help. Have a great one.